Well, I also think this is true with regards to Carney's positioning internationally as well. Like Trudeau has been pushing a green agenda, let's say, along with Guilbeault for 10 years. And he's doing that in the same way that the Europeans are doing that. And he's doing that in the same way that the World Economic Forum types, the Davos intellectuals, quasi-intellectuals are promoting. But my sense of Trudeau, and I think this is valid, is that he is nothing but a follower of those ideas. But that's not the case with Carney. Carney is a major architect and initiator of such ideas. And then what's...
Well, could be, but whether that's a good idea or bad, he's using Ottawa's failed economic logic of the 70s to affect the norm of a green transition or anything else.
Yes.
Whether a
so
green
even
transition...
if he's right, it's not going to work.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm not making a normative case whether this is a good or bad
that's
idea.
That's me making the normative claims.
He's just, it's going to fail. And it's going to fail in obvious economics.
Okay, and what'll failure look like?
Well, and there's a second leg to the failure.
Okay.
That the most profound force in the history of mankind in economics is the data-driven AI economy. And he has nothing to say of data as a factor of production and input to AI and how we have to own and control that and harness our own AI. He says nothing about it. He has 2 sentences about be careful about privacy and social media, and that's it. And so if you look at every market, energy, mining, agriculture, lumber, they're all AI and IP driven. And so he has nothing to say about that.
Why are they AI?
Because the force of it is allowing, I mean, as Schlumberger, who's one of the top 10 AI IP owners in the world and the large oil, Halliburton, but Schlumberger too. The oil is a digital economy, that you need digital AI and IP to get it out of the ground, get it refined.
Right, so even on the resource side, the IP ownership and tech element is increasingly predominant.
It's like the delivery taxi cab business. It became IP driven.
Right.
The medallion used to be worth $2 million. It went to zero because it's this superstructure of IP and data. And the same applies to shopping.
Right. So
retail.
the consequence of virtualization is total. It even
everywhere.
It even transforms.
It's horizontal.
Right.
It's horizontal, and there's no articulation of that. So it's very important. He lays out a path that affects us to an adverse outcome because of the dichotomy, and he says nothing about the innovation structure adjustment, but he uses further 1970s economic analysis that he says, because he very famously said businessmen are sitting on dead money. It's a very famous expression he said, and he said that we use shovels instead of excavators, backhoes. He said that, which means we don't invest in technology. So the key is that if business people stopped being lazy and they opened up their wallets and just threw it in there, they would do great. And to understand,
that's actually kind of a variation of the libertarian argument, is that
but it's also
a free
a
market
variation
failing.
of complacency.
Yes, exactly.
Resource curse complacency.
Yeah.
And I've been doing business in this country for 35 years. I have never met a CEO who says, I'm just going to take it easy and be on the dock this weekend. I don't want to double my profits this year. I've dealt with money managers all that time, both buy side, for investing in companies and me putting my money to work. I have never met a money manager who says, I'm happy to be third quartile this year rather than first quartile because the fishing's good. And the fact of the matter is
nobody's sitting back on their laurels.
Every businessman has this nose that they're sniffing for money and they're sniffing how to make money. That's the game. Everybody does that all day, every day. And for somebody who's been fundamentally a career civil servant and to make these broad articulations, who has never gone out and got a purchase order and traded Canadian goods globally, that actually means that he doesn't understand the nature of how capital goes in the productivity function.
Well, he's also shuffling off responsibility.
Well, the issue is if you don't have the IP and you don't have control of the AI function, if you put the money in that accrues to the owner of that.
Right.
So it's like you building a house on land you don't own.
Yeah.
And we had an economic policy of never owning the land underneath it. So, and then he says, well, look, if you build a house on that, it's going to be a great, big, beautiful, rich hotel. Don't be so lazy. Where the business kind of goes, I know I don't own the land. I don't know how to own that land.
Yeah.
I don't have a public policy that supports me there, but I'm sure not going to turn my dollar into 10 cents. Now, the public investments have always turned a dollar into 10 cents, but that's taxpayer money. But if a businessman does that, they're quickly bankrupt and out of the business. So his articulation and framing of we just have to spend more money longer, which is Einstein's definition of insanity, I think is misplaced because he's not resolving the core issue, which is what creates a good investment opportunity in an era of intangibles. And so I look at his prescriptions and you have to, it's important to understand this for people is that he's a macroeconomist and a central banker. And that's a very narrow function. Your responsibility is price stability of the money systems, banking stability and the regulatory compliance of the payment systems. You operate in a narrow but important realm. But your involvement with the firm and the productivity that's a very distant part. It seems similar.
Right. So his expertise doesn't transfer.
The metaphor I can say is it's like he's a leading dermatologist.
Yeah.
He's a doctor.
Yeah.
And he said, well, I'm a doctor. I'm going to do neurosurgery because that's a doctor. And the brain is very close to the face, which has got skin. So I can do this. And in fact, these are very, very different realms that have very different levels of expertise. But there seems to be a comfort and a cavalierness weighing into realms that Canada's performed poorly. He has been part of a scene an architect of a scene that's performed poorly, and he has no expertise in this realm and no experience. He didn't need to have it as a central banker, but he's availing as if he does.
Yeah, well, that was one of my impressions in reading the book,
and it makes me nervous because his thinking to me is just a more efficient Trudeau.